Let's talk about payroll procedures and what kind of decisions you need to make as a new employer or as the payroll accountant for a new business. Even if the business you're working for is an established business, it's a best practice to confirm that the business is indeed handling payroll procedures in the most efficient and effective manner and complying with federal and state regulations. So what are payroll procedures? Payroll procedures are a set of guidelines, policies, and methodologies that are established to ensure proper control and handling of payments to employees. In short, if you work in a payroll team, you'd say, this is how we do things here. The important thing is that your payroll procedures must adhere to government regulations, not just meet your company's needs. As is the case with many things, it's best to do it right from the start. That means when you first start hiring new employees, it's important to establish good payroll processes and procedures. You need to spend some time on planning and deliberating and do some research to figure out what's common in your industry. Remember, you're trying to recruit employees, but they have choices, right? So you need to make sure that your payroll procedures do not stand in the way of you recruiting and then retaining important employees to your business. So let's talk a little bit about what you need to do to set that up. First, think about scale. You need to have a payroll framework that has enough room for company growth. When you're starting a new business, you're not going to plan for being a 1,000 employee company when you're only just hiring one employee. But leave yourself some room. Don't just set up your system for that one employee. Plan a little bit for future expansion and assume that you might have 10 or 20 employees soon. In addition to room for growth, you need enough structure to make sure that company and governmental deadlines are met. You need to make sure that you spend enough time on these aspects or hire somebody who's going to do that for you. Here's some of the questions a new employer must consider before hiring an employee and then review them on a regular basis. How often do you want to pay your employees? So what is the pay frequency? If the standard in your industry is weekly, you might not be able to hire and retain employees if you're paying only once a month. So the decision you need to make is whether you will pay your employees daily, weekly, bi-weekly, semi-monthly, or monthly. Another question to ask is, how do you want to pay your employees? What is the pay type? Is the standard to pay by paper check? Will you always have somebody available who can issue those checks? Are they going to be mailed to the employee? Are they going to pick them up in the office? Another payment option is to use pay cards and just reload those pay cards with the new payroll check amounts for the payroll period. Or are you going to offer direct deposit? Industry standards and competing companies in your industry are important in making those decisions. However, the process must work for your business as well. What benefits do you want to offer your employees? Vacation time and sick time are considered basic benefits. Are you going to offer health insurance, dental insurance, and disability benefits? You may feel strongly that that's what you want to do, but can your business sustain that? Or how much does your employee need to contribute to those benefits? It's important to think about that. Another question you should ask yourself is, how do you want to handle pay advances? Some employees may need an advance before their next payroll check is processed. How will you maintain confidentiality of employee records? You must have good internal controls to prevent confidential information from being shared with people that should not have access to that. And how will you prevent fraud? There's a higher risk especially in the payroll function, that an employee could issue checks that shouldn't have gotten issued. And will the payroll system be manual, electronic, or outsourced? There are a lot of decisions to make, which may seem a little overwhelming, but we'll look at it step by step. So let's look at what we need to do next in terms of payroll procedures. All businesses in general need an EIN, according to the IRS. An EIN is usually required for licensing and permitting, as well as opening a business bank account. So you would request an EIN from the IRS even before you hire employees. It is essentially the social security number for a business. Applying for an EIN is easy and can be done online. In most cases, you will receive your EIN the same day. If the IRS requires additional information, it may take up to 2 business days. The application requires you to provide information about your business, such as your trade name, address, personal information, if you're applying as a sole proprietor, and contact information. So here is Form SS4. It's relatively short form with 18 lines to complete. Lines 1 through 7 are for the company's demographic information, such as name and address and representative. Lines 8 and 9 are about the company, whether it is a U.S. or foreign company, the type of business, and where it was incorporated. Line 10 requires you to check the reason for applying. On line 11, you list when the business started, and on line 12, the closing month of the accounting year. On line 13, you complete the number of employees by category. On line 14, you check if the box if you expect the tax liability to be $1,000 or less. And on line 15, list the first date wages were paid, if applicable. On line 16, check the box that best describes your business and indicate on line 17 the principal line of business. On line 18, check yes if you previously applied for an EIN. Sign and date the form and list your telephone number and fax number if applicable. The online form looks different, but the information you have to complete is the same. The next steps in terms of hiring an employee, once you've decided on a great candidate, is the documentation of an employee's eligibility to work in the United States with Form I-9 and tax withholdings with Form W-4, as well as compensation method, hourly rates or salary amounts, tax liabilities, and voluntary withholdings. Those are all critical elements that you need to capture in an employee's file and that are needed by the payroll accountant or the business owner to process the payroll successfully. Form I-9, issued by the Department of Homeland Security, is used to verify the identity and employment authorization of individuals hired for employment in the United States. All U.S. employers must complete Form I-9 for every individual they hire for employment in the United States. Section 1 of the form is the employee's demographic and citizenship status information. Section 2 is completed by the employer as part of examining and verifying the employee's documentation. The documentation consists of either one document from List A or one document from List B and C. Employees often choose a U.S. passport or a green card on List A, or they choose a driver's license from List B and Social Security card from List C. IRS Form W-4 is completed by the employee and reflects the employee's filing status, multiple jobs adjustments, amount of credits, amount of other income, amount of deductions, and any additional amount to withhold from each paycheck to use to compute the amount of federal income tax to deduct and withhold from the employee's pay. In step 1, the employee enters the personal information. In step 2, the employee accounts for all jobs they and their spouse have. In step 3, the employee claims their children and other dependents. In step 4, the employee makes other adjustments. And in step 5, the employee signs and dates the form. But there's more. Under the Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA, certain information is required in every employee file, such as the employee's name, address, birth date, gender, and occupation, hours worked, pay rate, regular and overtime earnings per pay period, total wages, and date of payment. Please keep in mind that the requirements can vary from state to state. Office supply stores and Amazon carry employee file folders that allow you to track some of this information manually and keep copies of what you provided to your employees. After all employee information is gathered, the owner or payroll accountant is ready to process payroll, but the process of entering items into a payroll system varies depending on the type of work done and the compensation rates for which the payroll accountant must have documentation. A very important aspect is that the employee information must be safeguarded, and information privacy is paramount. Just as it is important to safeguard the employee's personal information, the destruction of payroll-related documents after the required retention period is also a serious concern. And an entire industry focuses on just document retention and destruction.